question for you. This is to those who are business owners right now, and some of you will know this answer because there's a predefined definition of this. What is the definition of a successful business owner? And just shout it out if you know it, by the way. Ali?
It's someone whose business is supporting what they want to achieve in life.
Okay. All right. All right. Yep. I think that's it. So supporting a kind of a bigger purpose. I'm going to put to you this one here: a commercial and profitable enterprise that works without you. So a business that, doesn't rely on the manager having to be there when the team are functioning and producing good quality work, serving customers well, fulfilling the ultimate mission of the business, but it doesn't require the business owner having to be there. That's the real definition of success. And by the way, that's when a business, come sale time, is actually worth a lot of money to someone who says, I fancy buying that. So that's what we're always working towards as business owners. But I'm going to ask you the question now, is because this is more about management, which then is, okay, what's the definition of a successful manager? If that's the definition of a successful business owner, what do you think a definition of a successful manager might be? What's your definition?
Is it like a team that works well without you?
100%. Right. Okay. So this is my definition. Okay. So, and I'll try and unpack this as we go through some of the next few slides. But imagine if we actually got a competent, productive, and focused team that performs well even when you're not there. That's what we're shooting for. That would be success. And I always like to flip these definitions round. So if you think that that's not a good definition, let me play it to you the other way, right? Or actually, who would like to have a go at giving me the exact opposite of this scenario? If that's the positive definition of what we're trying to shoot for as a manager, what would happen if we had the complete opposite? What's the definition?
An incompetent, unproductive, unfocused team that doesn't perform when you're there.
Right. Okay. Right. It's quite nice to sometimes say it that way, Ali. And you know what? I said it exactly the same way when I initially put this together. I always do the kind of, okay, what's the inversion of that? But actually, I shared this with someone only about 2 weeks ago, and they actually picked up on something that I hadn't picked up on. So what they said was, so again, check where you said this as well. You said, imagine having an incompetent, unproductive, and unfocused group of individuals, not team, right? That doesn't perform even when you are there, right? That's just hellish. That's not what we want, right? So therefore, what is it that we need to do in order to avoid that bad definition and actually move towards the positive? All right. So the mindset that I'm going to suggest is going to be most important to us all as we. Oh, Connor, hello, mate. Can I just ask you to mute yourself? Oh, if I'll mute yourself there. Well done, Connor, for joining in. The mindset I'm going to suggest is going to be most helpful to you as a manager or a business owner is this one here. Don't view yourself as the superhero. And what I mean by that is the person that has to kind of swoop in and fix all the problems or do everything and say, well, if a job's worth doing, it's worth, I'll do it myself. You can't get good people, right? Now that's a fault that I see quite a lot of us falling into, which is I'll just do it myself. Right. And the idea of that is, for those of you who've got kids, I know, Teddy, I'm looking at your little picture there just now, you've got quite young kids, and you'll probably be at the stage of you'll be tying the shoelaces for your kids right now. Okay? But there will come a time when you will have to let them do it themselves. They can't be 16 years old and still holding out their left foot saying, Dad, could you tie my shoelace? Right? So we need to stop tying the shoelaces for our kids and for our team members. So a much more healthy way of looking at ourselves would be to this idea of to be a people grower, a nurturer of people, where someone actually we can pour on the attention, the training, the knowledge, the time, so that we can give people the opportunity to actually take on some challenges, give things a go, so that they themselves can grow. And over time, they become capable of actually doing some of the stuff that you were the only person in your team that was able to do it. So this idea of, I'm not a superhero, I am a people builder, or I am a people grower, I'm going to suggest to use a far more encouraging and helpful mindset to have. You don't have to be the one solving all the problems. So again, with that in mind, I'm going to just rattle you through some stuff that I know that some of you will be familiar with, some of you might be for the first time. But if I were to say to you, how do we mobilize a team of people? I'm going to suggest that there are 9 key steps. And the 9 steps really play into acts of leadership, which is signified in the red and the heart, because really leadership is all about kind of connecting with people's hearts, the emotional side of things. And then we also have to do the management side of things, which is the logic, which is, okay, now that I'm on board with the heart, let the mind kind of see some logic to say, how do we do this? So I'll explain that now. Okay, the first 4 acts of mobilizing the team are leadership acts, which is, are we clear and are our team clear on what the vision is? What is it that we're actually trying to achieve in this team, in this business? The clearer that we can be on that, the better, because people can connect and say, I want to be part of that. I like the journey that we're heading on. The mission then is, okay, how do we actually choose to plot our way to achieve that vision? So again, not just saying, okay, here's what the North Star looks like way out in the distance, but actually I can show you a bit of a route map that'll help us to get there. And then on the journey, then we need to start to define what the culture is. So what does the behavior within the team need to look like? What are some of the winning behaviors that we need to have in all of our team members that will allow us to, together as a team, make that journey possible? And along that way, we probably need to plot out some goals, some key milestones in the journey that just says, okay, so look, in 6 months' time, here's where we're headed towards. In a year's time, here's some of the kind of the key milestones that we should be at on the journey towards the much bigger vision. Now, those are acts of leadership. Now, if we do those things and we do them well, then what you get is you get people who say, do you know what? I'm up for being here. I want to be part of it. And guess what? You really want people who genuinely are choosing to be here because of these reasons. But once they're there, we need to kick into the management side of things, which says, okay, let's lay things out so that everyone knows what they're doing. So the idea of an organizational chart, creating some level of clarity that everyone knows who is doing what within the team. And within the org chart, of course, everyone needs to know what their role is. So every box on the organizational chart really should be a tight set of descriptions that says this role performs these functions and here are the key outputs for that we're expecting that role to deliver. And the way of measuring the success of that role is through the key performance indicators, or call them whatever you want, frankly, but it's what are the key outcomes that we're trying to shoot for. And then every role needs a system. I often talk about when I was a 15-year-old in McDonald's in Stirling, I could turn out something that resembled a Big Mac on day one because I could stand in front of the burger station, and because there was a system there for me to follow, I could follow the instructions and turn out something that resembled a Big Mac. Right? That's the power of systems. So every role needs to have some systems that says, okay, how do you do the job that you're expecting me to do? A good manager will help to get those systems in place. And then the last thing is, how do we organize the team on a daily, weekly, monthly basis so that there is a good flow of the necessary communication in a communication rhythm, so meeting rhythm, right? Is it the daily huddles or the work in progress meetings, or the team meetings, the one-to-ones, the strategy meetings, and so on and so forth? So again, if we've got them well defined in our business, then the diary runs everything, doesn't it? If we've got a team of people, all of who know what they have to be doing in the role, and then say, okay, what do I need to bring to certain meetings and what do I need to communicate so that I can pass the baton on to the next person, then that's a well-run team. So in a nutshell, those are the 9 steps to mobilizing the team. And really what we get from these things are, through good leadership, we're creating passionate and focused people. Okay, people who want to be there and they know where they're going. And then on the management side of it, we're looking for competent and productive people. Right? People who know what to do and how to do it, and they know the quantity and the quality of what's expected of them. Now we're going to focus in on this green side for this morning, and we'll focus on the red side in another session on the leadership side in a few weeks' time. So I said to you at the start of this is what are the 4 things that a good manager does? So let's go from the center here. If a good manager, our job as managers is ultimately to create people who are competent and who are productive. And therefore there's 4 things that we're just going to walk through just now. Those being clarity, setting expectations. Once an expectation has been set, we need to do the next thing, which is, okay, how do we measure against that? Here's what we expected. How are we going versus that expectation? Right? Are we above or below? Are we on? And what do we need to do depending on where we're at? Systems, I've just given you the McDonald's example of, okay, have we got systems so that people know actually how to do the role? And then, are we training people sufficiently? I think some people said in the chat box earlier on there that spending time with people to help them improve. So if we do those 4 things, what we tend to kind of get is we get competency and productivity. And really the way I would lay this out here is the competent side of it. If we do clarity, and again, I can't remember who it was that said clarity, maybe it was you, Mark, but if we do clarity well, and we kind of have well-defined systems, we've got people who become competent. And then if we do the measurement and training, we get productive people because they know what's the quantity of output that they need to be delivering, and also what's the quality of that as well. So I'm going to explore each of these now in turn. Before I do so, because we'll literally walk through each of these 4, and then what we'll do is we'll probably have some time for questions. But if I just pause there just now and just ask, are there any kind of key questions that you have right now, or any observations or points that have maybe resonated with you so far? We've been talking for maybe 20 minutes. So any key points to raise or ask?
That's a really useful framework, actually. We're about to review a major system around pre-sales, account manager, and sort of procurement. And so that all absolutely is spot on as headers for like where are we now and where we need to go.
Okay, good. Well, look, hey Ali, look, this is a framework. If you think about it, this is my system. Right? So if you think about it, if I want to become a good coach and help people become better managers, I need a system to show to people and then say, right, okay, now let's work through the system and start to improve on each aspect of that. So you're exactly right. It's a good framework. Any other points to call out? Happy to move on otherwise. Okay. Good stuff. Well, again, shout out if there's anything that kind of occurs to you as we're kind of going through this. So let's kind of look at clarity first of all. Right? It's impossible to meet an expectation that hasn't been set. Okay, so again, the fairest thing that we can do as managers is to be clear with people right up front. And I referred to a thing called the Gallup 12, didn't I, just earlier on. Now, basically, this was a survey conducted, decades ago now, actually, by the Gallup organization, to literally tens of thousands of organizations, hundreds of thousands of employees around the world. And basically, the question that they were looking to address was, how do you attract, motivate, and retain the best people in your industry? That was the question that they were trying to address. What needs to happen? And they then distilled it down into 12 questions. And there were sequential questions that says, okay, question number 1 is the most important. And after that, you then go to question number 2 and so on. Question number 1 was this: do I know what's expected of me at work? Right? That's the first question, because if you think about it, if someone doesn't know what's expected, what happens? Right? You get a thing called role ambiguity, which basically says, I don't know what you want me to do. And that creates stress. And when you've got stress from a start point, then you're off to a bad start. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is give our team clarity. Now, what do we give them clarity on? So I'll explain the image in a wee second. 1, the role. Does everyone in the business actually know, in your team, do they know what their role is and what their role isn't? Because again, if you were to ask people in the team, look, write down what you think your role is, and then you were to do it, what do you think the marry up would be of points? Here's what I think my role is, and this is the manager saying, well, here's what your role really is. What do you think the matchup is? I'll tell you what, it's about 40 to 45% match over. So it's really saying that about 55, 60% of what someone's doing isn't what their manager expects them to do. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? So again, just being tight around, okay, here's the expectation of the role is going to be massively helpful and time saving. The numbers. So I said KPIs, remember in the 9 steps that I've just shown you? The numbers. All right, so when you do your role, this is the kind of outputs that we would expect you to achieve. So the KPIs. So be fair with people. It just says, right, here's what good looks like. Achieving these kind of numbers when you do these things, that's you doing a good job. Anything below that, we probably need to have a chat about to see how we can bring it back up. Anything above that, phenomenal. Fair, isn't it? Really fair. And then the last bit, behaviors and standards. One of the things that people tell me is the hardest thing about management is pulling people up on some behaviors. It's actually easier, isn't it, to have a conversation with someone if they're not hitting their numbers. Well, almost if the numbers are visible, it becomes quite obvious. It says, "Oh, look, we're behind track, or we've been failing to hit target for X number of weeks or months." There's obviously a conversation that's easier to have there. But what happens when someone's behavior is not quite what you want? Well, if you've never set the expectation of what the behavior should be, they might just say, well, I always do it that way. Or what's wrong with that? No one's ever told me it's wrong. So the idea of setting some, this is where values comes in, being clear on the values of the team. And I'll show you an example from a client. Actually, Connor might know this example very well. But those things are the things that I would suggest that we really need to do a good job on to create clarity. And what that does is, for those of you who are familiar with above and below the line, which of course is the central philosophy to everything that we do, I think, in life, is that we're effectively trying to eliminate the opportunity for people to blame, which is, well, Mary didn't tell me, Ali didn't tell me. Right, and we're given responsibility. So it's a bit like I've got a baton in my hand just now, which you might be able to see, a relay baton. And really what we're saying is, I'm not going to let go of this baton to the person I'm handing it to until I know they've got it firmly. And really that's for me to check as a manager. Look, have I been really clear with you around the role? Is there any questions at all on that? Because it's very likely that I might not have explained it well enough. Right? What about the numbers? Do we understand what the expectations are in terms of the outcomes? And so on. Now, once I've checked in that my communication has been sufficiently good, I've got to say, well, look, I can let you run with that. You've got it, right? But I won't do that until I know that I've done as good a job as I can as a manager. I'm not going to blame my team for not doing a good job, because I need to be good at actually giving them good level of clarity. Does that make sense, folks? Yeah. The responsibility is with us as managers to do that first for our team. And again, here's a little funny one, which I always like. It's a little poem that sits on my table. Whose job is it anyway? It's ridiculous. This is a story about 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have. That is what happens an awful lot in teams because people haven't been clear on things from the outset. So we want to avoid that.
I've hired all 4 of those people.
And you've been all 4 of those people as well, I'm sure, Ali. But you know, it's crazy, isn't it? But that does happen. But when we do the things in the previous page, obviously we eliminate or minimize the opportunity for that. Now, here's a little example. You won't be able to see this particularly well. It doesn't matter. So this is actually Connor, who's on the call just now. So we sat down with kind of Connor and Stephen in their business, and we looked at, okay, from along the top here, right the way through from the start of the customer journey, from marketing and business development through to sales, into operations, onto account management, people management, finance, premises and compliance, all the kind of key functions of the business. And we said, okay, that's the journey that people will go through. What are all down here, all of the tasks and responsibilities that need to be handled? And then importantly, who does them? So this was a real sort of overview of the whole business, and then start to get real clarity so that people could then understand, right, okay, I know who's doing that side of things. I don't have to worry about that because when it's done well by my colleague, they've got it, and then they hand it to me. Massively important to get that kind of thing there. So again, here's a little, you can't see it, but here's the, this would be an example. So in this instance, we defined that Stephen was the guy who's responsible for lead gen. We've got a good definition of that. And here are the key things that he, and in this instance, he and Martin will then do. Brilliant. The start of getting clear. Okay, here's another example that the guys did. They really worked on their behaviors, the standards and behaviors and values of the team. So again, all of the team, Connor, if you're on the call, you'll remember this, the team session we did just in January. And this is it. Everyone contributed to say, okay, what are the things that as a team we should be doing to create a winning culture? And this was the output of what the team put in. Fabulous. Really, really clear. Can you imagine bringing someone into your team and saying, okay, look, before you even start, let me just kind of lay down for you. Here's all the things that will make us win. Here's the standards, the behaviors. Here's the stuff that, here's the 5 values along the top. Here's what it means. Here's the desired behavior. Here's how we know that, or you'll know you're doing these values. But equally, when you do these things, that's definitely below expectation. That's not in line with values. All of a sudden becomes a much easier tool to use to have a good quality conversation. All right, quality work by those guys. All right, so once we've set the expectation, we've done the clarity bit, then it becomes much easier to measure. Okay, and what we know is what gets measured gets managed. All right, so again, we've got Muhammad Ali in the background there, and what is it that he was famously asked when in training by a journalist was, how many sit-ups do you do in training? And he says, I don't know. He says, I don't know because I only start counting when it starts to hurt. And what he was really saying is he wants to kind of move as quickly out of his comfort zone as he can into the growth zone and stay in the growth zone for as long as he can. So he recognized that actually putting his physical body under pressure was the way he would grow. And I'm going to suggest to you that measurement creates a level of pressure in a conversation with your team member. Now, if you didn't have any measurement, it's like, oh, fine, I can just turn up and do whatever I want. But we need to have a level there of a bit of pressure because everyone performs with a level of pressure. Too much, they start to underperform, but they need enough. Again, I would dare say that most of us are on the call have either got rent to pay or mortgage to pay. Right? The act of that responsibility gets you out of bed in the morning to come to work. So that's a level of pressure that makes us perform. Okay, so therefore, the first thing is the third thing, right? A good manager will have a third thing in a conversation. So the example I've just given you about that values document, can you imagine? I'm looking at you, Mark, just now. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to say anything. But imagine I'm your manager and I see that there's some behaviors that they're just not quite right, or I'm sensing it, team are feeding back. I need to have a conversation with you, right? So actually, if I don't have anything to lean on, I'm kind of saying to you, look, Mark, I need to have a conversation with you. You're doing X, Y, and Z. It's not really on. And you'll probably say, well, you never told me that. I did it in my last company, and that's how I just do it. That's just who I am. But you can't take me talking straight to people. No, you're being thoroughly obnoxious. Do you know? Then you get into this kind of very subjective conversation where I'm looking at you, you're looking at me. It's like, ugh. Now, if we've got a third thing in the conversation which says, look, let's get eyes on this. These were the behaviors that we all said were the things that would make us win as a team, right? How do you think you're doing there? Because I'm telling you, there's a few things that I'm seeing that are currently below expectation. Can we get ourselves back above the line? It's an easier conversation to have when we've got something that's already previously agreed, yeah? Or the role description, or the KPIs, or whatever it might be, the 90-day plan. All right, eyes on that. How are we doing against the driving accountability? Does that make sense? The third thing? Yeah. So that's what clarity gives us. Then how do we track the activity and the outcomes as well? I'm going to come on to this in a little second, right? Because all too often, I think we track outcomes, but we don't track activities. I'll explain what I mean in a wee second. And then thirdly is just having those regular one-to-one conversations, right? Sitting down with people. Just because we actually work with people closely in the office, that doesn't constitute a one-to-one. A one-to-one is actually something outside of, in an environment where you can breathe a little bit as two people and chat and say, how's it going? Let's review and reflect on performance. Let's kind of hear what some of the challenges are. We need to be able to do that so that we can course correct and get people on a good path. Because really, what we're trying to do here is we want to kind of get people away from an excuse mentality to driving accountability. All right, how do we get back on track? How do we kind of help people to achieve what their role asks them to do? And maybe a good example, let's see what we've got here. Okay, two little frameworks that I think people are starting to use with pretty decent effect is a way of measuring would be to have the old Lion meeting. Familiar with Lion meeting, folks? I know that Ali, you're familiar, maybe a few of you. Yeah? What does Lion stand for? Okay.
Last week.
All right, perfect. Imagine having a session. Right, I'll let you shout them out as I do them, Ali. Right. All right. So you're in a session with someone that says, okay, so Teddy, how did you get on last week versus what you said you were going to achieve? All right. Okay. Then it's for Teddy to say, okay, here's how I got on. The next one, Ali? Issues. All right. So look, last week, what issues did you have and how did you solve them? Right. It's important. That last bit is quite important. What issues? Life happens, and it's not always going to be a straight line. There's going to be issues. So may as well start a conversation by saying, okay, cool. So what issues did you have? But importantly, what did you do to solve them? All right. I don't want to hear the issues for you just to come to me and say, dump them on me. What did you do to actually move them forward? How many of us have maybe made the mistake of actually saying, right, give me your problems and I'll solve them? No, we're not after that. Oh, Ali?
Opportunities.
All right, cool. So in the last week, what opportunities have you spotted and what action did you take to really exploit those opportunities? Cool, because there's going to be stuff there that you've noticed, right? What opportunity was there to kind of get another customer or to sell something additionally or to improve the efficiency? Cool. What did you do about it? Accountability. And then
next week or next.
Look at that. Perfect. What a student. Next week. All right, cool. So what is it that you are committing to achieve by the next week? So I'm not telling, as a manager, I'm not telling you. I'm just saying, you, what are you going to commit to doing? All right, well, I'm going to get X, Y, Z. Fantastic. Look forward to seeing that next week. And then next week, you'll be reviewing how did you get on against the things you said you were going to do. Now that's accountability. but in the hands of the team member. All right, cool. You said you're going to do that. Excellent. What support do you need? Happy to help. If not, see you next week, and good luck with kind of seeing that through. So that's one little thing. The other one, this is one that the guys at Bridges Properties started to do, was getting really clear with their sales team around, well, what are the activities that they need to be engaged in on our, this is what do they need to do in order to be successful, right? And they said, okay, here's the activity. What's the level of, what's the quantity that need to be done? Okay, so here's the target. And then how do we measure that on a weekly basis? Classic green, amber, red kind of traffic light system. How are we doing? And we know that when we do these activities, here's the number of leads that we would expect to get, right? So again, nice and clear set of KPIs. So that's the what to do and the quantity. But here's the thing, and I think where's she gone? Melissa kind of alluded to this in what she said earlier. That's where a lot of people stop. What to do and quantity. So some people don't even have KPIs. Some people get to this point and it's better than nothing. But if you go back to the definition, what it's not doing is two other things, right? It's not doing, oops, it is. Oh, my apologies. It's not doing the, okay, how do you actually do the activities, and how do we help you improve the quality? So remember I said it was like what to do, how to do it, quantity and quality, right? This is just a tracking mechanism, right? But we then have to say, what's the system that we're writing? And then how do we train against the system? So this is where systems then start to come in. And again, maybe the classic phrase that I would share is that, it's the systems that run a business or run a team, and it's the people that run the systems. And, I use McDonald's all the time as a classic example of, like, the average age of a McDonald's store is something like 1920. Yeah. And it's kind of a mid-20s kind of age for a manager. Right? So it's actually a very young team running multi-million-pound outlets. How do they do that? Well, it's because it's very well systemized. So again, this idea of having a leverage mindset is really important as a manager, which is do the work once, get rewarded long term. So what are some of the things that I need to do up front to kind of write the system, to be clear with people around, okay, here's how you do it, so that people aren't constantly running back and forth to say, how do I do this? How do I put the lettuce on the burger? I could have asked, okay, what do I do next? Where do I put the cheese? How do I put, do you know? It's like if the system's already written, it saves a lot of hassle. And again, this idea of how do we kind of move towards the Jira way or the Maki and Ramen way, right? Because there'll be a McDonald's way, a McDonald's operating manual, and it should be the same for all businesses. It's like, what's the operating manual for your business? How does it actually function, and how do people do their jobs? That's what we're really moving towards. And it makes delegation way, way easier when you've got something to delegate to. So I'll explain that in a wee second a bit more. But again, this idea of it allows you to move away from denial, which is burying the head in the sand or thinking, I don't know how to do this job, to actually, I can give someone ownership. Okay, here's the way you do it. Here's the way you do it, and follow those steps, and you're gonna turn out something that resembles the kind of output we're after. You can own your role. So again, this idea of systems, do the work once, get rewarded long term. Right? What is a system? What is the acronym of systems? I quite like this one. Save yourself time, energy, money, and stress. Get things out of your own head, down onto a bit of paper, into a system so that others can follow. Hugely important. And that can be all aspects of your business. The stuff that's quite routine. I mean, my business in coaching, you could say, well, it's very varied. It's all about people. It's different businesses. How can you write a system? No. It can be systemized. 80% of what I do can be systemized. Just follow that system and then humanize the system to the situation that you're in. So again, What systems might need to be written in your team, because what that allows then is for delegation to be much easier. And really, delegation is what? Handing over a skill or knowledge and responsibility. And it's the old baton again. So again, a master skill for us to develop as managers is delegation. All right. And good delegation starts with an explanation, which is here's what to do and here's why we do it. The why is really important. Give people an understanding of that. Then the demonstration is, okay, let me show you how to do it, and I'll show you. And then we have the imitation, which is now you show me. And then we have the repetition, which is once you've done those first 3 stages well, then let people just do it. You know, take responsibility, check in, maybe after a day, how did you get on with that thing? All right, cool. What did you learn? What needs to improve? Okay, what else do you need from me? This idea of reviewing it, and ultimately people's confidence lifts when they've had exposure to the opportunity, but you've been there kind of close with them, and then as they start to develop their competence, you back away, and then it becomes theirs. That's good delegation. Again, nice little framework of how you do it. And of course, underpinning all of that is you've got to have belief in the person. As the manager that's releasing your ownership to someone else, have belief that that person can actually kind of do this if you've done your bit well. And you also have to be patient. They're never going to be as good as you the first time, the second time, or maybe even the 10th time, right? Because but again, this idea of don't compare your page 25 to their page 2. You're further ahead. They'll catch up with time. Be patient. And then the final thing to just kind of cover off there is training becomes much easier when you've got that system. Okay. And I remember speaking to someone, and I won't say who it is, but I remember speaking to someone and said, okay, what's your ambition? And the ambition was to become the best X in their industry in Scotland. Brilliant. I thought, what an amazing ambition. I said, just out of interest, how are you getting on with, there was a particular type of training that this industry does. How are you getting on with that? And he looked at me and he said, oh, we don't tend to do that very often. Right? I said, wait a minute, you just said to me that you want to be the best in your industry, and then the most basic of training, you're saying you don't have time for. And I compared that. I says, look, my favorite team is FC Barcelona, right? Brilliant team. There's Lionel Messi in the middle, right? I says, do you really think that Barcelona would the coach would say, look, I'll tell you what, we're pretty busy guys through the week. We haven't got time for training, but we'll definitely play on Saturday or Sunday. We'll be there for that, but we don't have time for training. It's like, of course you would. It's ridiculous, right? So therefore we have to then look at ourselves and say, how much time are we actually spending with our team or giving our team for themselves to develop through training? Because they can only perform to the level to which they've been trained. So our job as managers, I'm going to suggest, is to be their coach, to help them develop. And I'm going to show you a video in a wee second, which is a really good one. Personalized approach. How everyone in your team is going to be different. This is where you use DISC. People learn in different ways. They're different types of people. Right? A C will learn differently from an I, a D from an S. People also, some people are more visual, some are more auditory. Some are more learn by doing in terms of their learning style. So again, how do we make sure that we're getting alongside people but talking in their language? Because it's all very well you knowing stuff, but we have to then get alongside them and say, okay, has the community, what you're trying to transfer, are you transferring it in a way that lands with that other individual? And then finally, how do we highlight to people what the gap might be that says, okay, here's what your current level of performance is. Here's what the standard is. That's the gap, but that's the bit we're going to then work towards closing. So you get up to standard. That's the job of the good manager. Because we want people ultimately to move from being a bit tentative in their role to being really confident, where they can stride forward with confidence. That's what we want. So I'm going to share with you in the last, it'll probably take a couple of minutes. I'm going to share with you a video which I saw. Hopefully this will work. Let's just, here we go. A video that I saw on social media a good number of years ago of a parkour coach teaching a little boy how to do a backflip. Right now, I saw that and I thought, oh, it was only a minute long. And I thought, that's a cracker. That's a real cracker to demonstrate what I mean by getting close in with your team to help them develop. So what I then did was I then got this kind of edited so that we could then go look at all the things that the coach does for the young lad to help him get better. So I'm going to ask you to notice, it's quite fast, so I'll show you it twice. Notice what the coach is doing and try and scribble down as many coaching points that you can see him do. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of see how many we get together as a team. Okay, is that clear? So just, it goes very fast. So just note down what you can see. We'll give you another chance to play it, and then we'll come back and discuss. Here we go. Oops. All right. Just out of interest, just have a quick count of how many coaching points you noticed, and just pop them in the chat box so I can see. So I'm going to go back and give you another chance to. Where's my chat box gone? There we go. 6 from Ali, 6 from Mark. Any advances on 6? Thing is, someone could say 7 or 8, and I'd believe you. Right. All right. Now look again and see how many more you can spot. Okay. This is a manager trying to help his team member get better. Okay. It's parkour coaching, but it's the same principle. One more time. All right. Okay, how many now, guys? Did you spot more? You counting them all up? For the sake of time, I'm going to suggest to you, Teddy kind of came in and said, all right, okay, so I would like to think that you've spotted more again. But again, this is what we need to do as managers. I do spend time with people to help them to grow. So here we go. I reckon that there was 21 coaching points in there. Okay, and I'll let this run for the rest of the time, and then you can see them. Okay. Establish the goal. Set the environment. demonstrate. Praise is so important. Spend time with one another. Give people a bit of stretch. Do it in stages. Mistakes are good. Focus on progress. Step it up. All right. Oops. So look, I'm going to stop sharing there. Look, there you go. Isn't that what you're after? You want people to be able to do it for themselves. And it goes back to my first definition, which is this idea of a competent, productive, focused team of people that work well when you're there. Or sorry, when you're not there. That's how we kind of, hopefully, we've gone through clarity measurement systems and training. I said we were going to go fast, right? I wanted to kind of go through it, so hopefully you can now see how it all fits together. But what we can do, if you want to, happy to go into any one of those in much more detail on a separate session, if that would help you. But I wanted to kind of give you that overall sense of how we help people become competent and productive.